When Congress returns next week, the House will have a rescissions package waiting for them, as we talked about earlier. The Senate, well, they will take up the one big beautiful bill, even as the left falsely claims it kicks the poor people who are on Medicaid to the curb. And here, again, is one of the senators from the state of Massachusetts and what she had to say about the bill.
This bill would cut Medicaid, gut the Affordable Care Act, and slash food assistance. If it passes the Senate, this bill will rip health care away from 14 million people, over 250,000 right here in Massachusetts, all to pay for handouts to billionaires. This Republican bill will raise costs for working families, from groceries to health care to utility bills, while making the richest Americans even richer.
Of course, that was Senator Elizabeth Warren on the warpath. Joining me now to dive into this is Suzanne Bowdey and Mark Tapscott from the Washington Stand. Suzanne, Mark, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thanks,
Great
Tony.
to be here.
All right, Mark, I'm going to let you tackle that one because you actually just wrote a piece recently analyzing the One Big Beautiful Bill and the fact that cutting waste, fraud, and abuse and saving taxpayers' dollars is not in any way affecting those who are in need.
You know, Tony, I have listened to that clip multiple times, and I have yet to figure out anything that she says in there that has a factual basis to it. It's just not true. And my story that you just mentioned was based on a new analysis by the Foundation for Government Accountability. And they found that Medicaid, 1 out of every $5 that is spent on Medicaid is an improper payment, is going to somebody who should not be getting it. So if you eliminate all of those improper payments, you're not reducing coverage for anybody. And in fact, you might be making it possible to improve the coverage.
Suzanne, you have been tracking a story out of Ohio where a lawmaker there looking into, and that's a red state, but looking into the state of Ohio and its expansion and just how much waste, fraud, and abuse existed there.
Right, and this is just a microcosm of the federal problem that we're talking about here, but a state representative there said, wow, if there's this much abuse going on at the federal level, let's take a look at Ohio. And what he found was that 30% of the people on Ohio's Medicaid were actually ineligible people. Now, this means that beyond the expansion of Medicaid, these were ineligible beyond even the Democrats' expansion of that. They found a number of people who were millionaires who had Medicaid. They found a number of people who had assets worth $100,000 to $999,000 who were receiving Medicaid. It's just a shocking abuse of taxpayer waste. And this is a red state, as you say. So imagine what that looks like if you, A, multiply that by 49 other states, and B, look at the blue states where governors have been able to really abuse this system and put people on who are work capable or able-bodied or, you know, in many cases, illegal immigrants. As we've seen, Mike Johnson said there are over 1.4 million illegal immigrants. This doesn't even account for that.
You know, we saw the government program in response to COVID where it was giving out, you know, the government money and now uncovering fraud. I mean, Mark, you've been around a long time. I mean, government money and programs are like cheese to mice. I mean, you're not going to keep them away. They're just going to run to it.
Absolutely. Suzanne just mentioned the potential for even greater waste in the blue states. The study that I just referenced, that I reported, referenced a New Jersey state audit of the New Jersey Medicaid program that found thousands of ineligible people, including one couple who had a net income of $4.2 million in 1 year. So that right there, you know, when government spends money, the word accountability disappears. And that, from my understanding, that is what the big, beautiful bill that we're now looking at, watching in Congress, is intended to begin changing.
So let me ask you this, Mark, and then I'm going to ask you, Suzanne, the same question. Is the bill that passed the House that was that was shepherded by the House Speaker Mike Johnson, is it on the right track?
Well, if as I said, if your goal is to make the government more efficient, it certainly includes, at least in my reading and from what I've read and heard from other experts, people who know a lot more about it than I do, it certainly is a significant step forward. I'm always hesitant to make a value judgment about legislation before we see the final version. And who knows what the Senate's going to do to it, but we'll find out here shortly.
You mean you haven't been to the Nancy Pelosi School of Government where you vote for it, endorse it, and then you read it? Oh, come on, Mark.
I still have nightmares about that.
All right. Suzanne, is it on the right track?
Well, if you ask the American people, according to GOP polling, 86% of Americans think that they want to they do want to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, and that's what this bill attempts to do. Now, I would argue you could go even farther. I know some senators on the Republican side are saying what the House has done is too much. I honestly think that they could claw back even the expansion that happened under the COVID era and under the Biden era, where you're having people on who don't need the care and you're actually depriving people who do of that care because you've so bloated the system. So yes, I agree with Mark. It's on the right track, but it could do more.
Yes,
honestly.
I mean, it's balancing.
The most.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Probably the most significant provision of it in that context is the work requirement, which would probably deal with a very substantial majority of the ineligibles. And fortunately, they seem to have moved up the beginning time to begin the
yes, they
work
did.
requirement.
That was kind of in the manager's amendment at the very end. Of course, let me remind folks, it passed by 215 to 214. Not a lot of wiggle room there in terms of trying to corral those votes. I wish everyone thought like we did, and it would have been a much more big, beautiful, conservative bill, but it's moving in the right direction. Speaking of calling back, Suzanne, when Congress returns, the House returns next week, a rescissions package. We were talking about that a little earlier in the program, about that's allowing the administration to say, hey, we want to cut this money that's been allocated. What's in that package?
Well, it's really interesting. Today and this week are part of the last days of Elon Musk's tenure at DOGE. He only has 130 days under the position he was appointed to by federal law. So this rescissions package comes as he's exiting, and it does puts into motion some of the cuts that he envisioned. Now, this is a $9.4 billion package. And as we've talked about before on the show, rescissions is a process whereby the president could submit a list of budget items that have already been approved by Congress. And he can say, hey, take another look at this. We want to claw this back. The House has House and Senate both have 45 days to do that. The clock will start ticking when he drops the package on Monday. Some of the things that are in it are really great wins for conservatives, including defunding NPR, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. They're taking a hit at USAID. There was a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse that was outrageous in that State Department agency. So there are a lot of really good things in this package. It's been long awaited for. This has been about a 6-week process where Trump and Russell Vogt have been talking with both sides of Congress to figure out where they should really target these cuts.
You know, it's been a long time to get it into the House, but it's been even longer that conservatives have been talking about these things. Mark, you've been around D.C. a while. You've heard, people make campaign pledges and promises, and we even heard some of this in the first Trump administration, but they're doing it. This is happening. What's the difference?
Well, it's interesting. In 2018, I believe, the first Trump administration submitted a $15 billion rescission package. It passed the House by a small margin, but it was rejected in the Senate largely because Senator Collins from Maine and Senator Burr, who's censure-tired, from North Carolina, voted with the Democrats to kill the rescission package. So I kind of understand the reluctance that we're seeing here in submitting only a $9.4 billion package. One hopes that if this gets through, and I suspect that it will, there will be additional packages to come, and that would be a good thing.
Well, just the fact that we're taking on NPR, we're taking on these government entities that have been around forever. That everybody likes to talk about them on the campaign trail, but very few actually want to follow through. President Trump is doing that to his credit. It's quite refreshing. Speaking of budget and financial stewardship, there are moral implications. And those moral lines are more clear when you consider the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert Kennedy's recent announcement to stop further gender transition procedures from minors, which many of them are occurring at taxpayer expense. He's now looking at more reporting to see where this money is going. Tell us about that, Suzanne.
I think a lot of people wondered, what would the RFK tenure look like? And so far it's been very consistent, at least on the gender transition side, with Trump's position, which is there's no place in government for taxpayer funding for gender transition surgeries for minors or for adults, as we've seen in the big beautiful bill, which cuts both of those little enclaves out. RFK Jr. has essentially said, look, we're gonna bring down the hammer with some financial oversight. Hospitals in the United States, especially those that have been participating in these procedures, will have to submit within 30 days their financials, meaning how are they ensuring that they're not providing these procedures to adults and minors? And if not, their taxpayer funding may be on the line. As we've seen in the education debate, Trump is not afraid of pulling the rug out from under these institutions, and hospitals may be next up. The American people do not want their taxpayer dollars funding gender transition surgeries. In fact, according to a poll from the AP, Trump's transgender agenda, meaning rolling back this gender ideology, is actually more popular among Democrats than his approval rating. It's 19% to 9. 19% side with Trump on his transgender agenda, and only 9% approve of him. So this is a popular thing across the board.
You know, I'm going to insert a commentary here, a little comment on that, because I think it's instructive why we see RFK and others taking these issues on is just what you pointed to. It is the American people have spoken about these things. And so I don't think people should ever underestimate the power of their voice, especially collectively. If we go back 10 years ago, we thought this freight train was just going to run across America. You know, we were saying stop, trying to get people's attention on this. And it finally pivoted, and people said when it came home in schools where parents were showing up to school board meetings because of bathroom policies and sports. But because people have spoken, it's gotten the attention of policymakers. And I mean, I just know, whether we like it or not, President Trump makes decisions based upon polls. And that's why we see his entire administration so aggressively pursuing this. So I just wanted to add that comment. We've got just about a minute left. Mark, I'll give you 15 seconds. Suzanne, you get 15 as well. Mark, go first.
Latest poll from Tony Fabrizio shows that marginal voters in 72 contested congressional districts overwhelmingly by 2 and 3 to 1 support Trump's major initiatives.
That's got to bode well for Republicans going into the midterm, don't you think, Suzanne?
Absolutely. They need to keep leaning into these social issues that are doing well for them. Even abortion is being quietly questioned among the Democratic Party insiders. Have we gone too far? And we would say they certainly have on this and other issues. Yeah,
and that's an area that this administration and some Republicans are still timid on, and they need to get bold, because you can never go wrong by being on the right side. Suzanne, Amen. Mark, always great to see you. Thanks for joining me today.